They told the Empire not to come. There were no grand negotiations, no flashing warning signs or translated broadcasts across the stars. Just a simple message, delivered once, blunt and final. Terran space is off limits. Do not approach, do not interfere. Of course, the Empire didn't listen. When has it ever listened? I remember the day their ships breached the edge of the Kuiper Belt. I was on Lunar Post Theta, halfway through my shift monitoring deep space traffic. Just routine scans, supply lanes, the usual orbital debris. Boring stuff. But then, their signals lit up my board like a goddamn Christmas tree. Imperial signatures, hundreds of them. Cruisers, carriers, something the analysts called a Planet Breaker class vessel. All sleek, massive, and pulsing with energy. Beautiful to look at, if you were blind to what they were about to do. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the display. My gut turned cold. Not because I was scared, we'd been preparing for this for years, but because it was finally happening. The Empire had decided to test the line. They thought we were bluffing. The officer on duty with me, Petty CMD-R. Lawson, just chuckled. Guess the galaxy's biggest bullies didn't get the memo. Maybe they did, I muttered. Maybe they just don't think it applies to us. The Empire had ruled over 1,000 systems for nearly a millennium. Their arrogance wasn't born from weakness. They'd crushed rebellions, extinguished planets, rewritten history like gods. And they thought humanity was just another unwashed species in some dusty corner of the galaxy. Primitive, unrefined, dangerous. Maybe, but still manageable. They never figured out why we were isolated, why we stopped attending galactic councils, why no one, no matter how curious or power-hungry, dared enter Terran sectors since the Red Convergence of 2678. Until now. The breach was slow at first. A few recon ships crossed the boundary line, scanners sweeping, mapping. When they didn't return, the fleet followed. More cautious than usual, but still full of the Empire's smug certainty. Their mistake wasn't entering our territory. Their mistake was thinking they could leave afterward. It took less than 6 hours before the first wave of human interceptors struck. Fast, brutal, merciless. No warning shots, no attempts at communication. These weren't politicians in ships. They were ghosts in steel, trained for one thing: eradication. You should have seen the footage. We all watched it from the station, wide-eyed and silent. Imperial hulls cracked open like tin cans. Human ships weren't larger or more advanced. They were just more vicious, designed for close-quarters slaughter. We don't fight like other species. We don't honor surrender. And we never forgive trespass. The Empire lost over 40 ships in the first engagement. I remember the exact number because the system AI logged each one as a cleared target. Not destroyed, not disabled, cleared. Lawson whispered, "They're not going to stop, are they?" "No," I said. "They don't know how." By day 2, they sent in a diplomatic vessel, an actual white-flagged cruiser with a peace council on board. We never responded. It was vaporized before it reached Mars' orbit. Not by accident. Not by misunderstanding. On purpose. Terran Command had made its decision decades ago. This wasn't about war. This was about warning. The message was simple. Come here, and you die. No exceptions. No treaties. No survivors. Some of the Empire's captains tried to turn back. Others didn't get the chance. One in particular, Admiral Threx of the 7th Galactic Armada, stayed behind to record a last message. Half desperation, half arrogance. I listened to it 3 times. "They fight like animals," he said, bleeding from a head wound, ship shaking behind him. "Not like soldiers, not like strategists, just rage, just raw hatred. Like they've been waiting for this, for us. I don't understand. We were trying to establish contact. I don't understand." His last words were cut off as his ship split in 2. I watched it happen in real time. Back on the station, I sat there, eyes locked on the black screen that followed. I felt nothing. No pity, no guilt, just one thought ringing in my head. They were warned. And now the real war was about to begin. They called it the Silence Protocol. Every man, woman, and AI in the Terran defense chain knew what it meant. Once initiated, there would be no transmissions in or out, no diplomacy, no second chances, no survivors on the other side. It was humanity's final doctrine, the last line drawn in blood and bone. And now it had been crossed. When the Imperial fleet entered the orbit of Ganymede, the last of our early warning satellites activated. The entire moon blinked red, systems lighting up like a bloodied eye. Ganymede's population had already been relocated months ago. Not because we feared invasion, because we expected it. Terran High Command was always 10 steps ahead. The moment those arrogant bastards breached the Kuiper line, the board was already set, the trap already closing. I remember sitting in the Command Operations Center on Luna, watching the live feed from the outer moons. Ganymede's surface split open like a puzzle box, and beneath it, buried beneath tons of ice and crust, rose the hidden weapons grid. They weren't just guns. These were relics of Earth's darkest projects. Orbital phase disruptors, gravlance arrays, neutron wave torches. Forbidden tech that even we weren't proud of. Lawson lit a cigarette next to me, despite regs. No one stopped him. "They really thought they could just walk in," he muttered, "like we'd kneel the moment they showed up." I didn't say anything. My hands were clenched too tight. The first shots from Ganymede tore through the lead Imperial dreadnought. It didn't explode, it just ceased to exist. One moment there was a ship there, half a mile long and glowing with power. The next, nothing but molecular ash scattered across vacuum. And that's when the panic set in. Not for us. For them. The Imperial fleet staggered, trying to recalibrate. You could almost hear the panic in their broken formations. But it was too late. Our strike wings had already launched from Titan and Europa. Silent ships, no broadcasts, no warning lights, just black hulls and absolute focus. The Empire called us ferals, unpredictable, emotional, dangerous. But they had no idea what that really meant. They didn't know that every human child was raised with stories of Earth's lost wars, that our military schools taught insurgency, sabotage, and orbital kill patterns before we ever let a cadet touch a rifle. They didn't understand that every ship we built was designed not just to kill, but to scar. I watched as our frigates slipped through their formations like wolves. They didn't target command decks or reactor cores. They went for life support first, then gravity systems. Then, only when the enemy ships were flailing and helpless, they ignited the cores and let the explosions chain react through the fleet. You could say it was tactical, efficient. But you'd be lying. It was vengeance. Because what the Empire didn't know, what no other species ever understood, was that we remember everything. We remember the betrayals at the Galactic Council. The sterilization of our outer colonies by accident. The forced shutdown of our AI networks under threat of intervention. We remembered every humiliation, every warning, every time they smiled while holding a knife behind their backs. The galaxy called us savages, uncivilized, unworthy of inclusion. Now they were learning what exclusion truly meant. By the end of the third day, over 60% of the invading fleet had been wiped. Not defeated. Wiped. Ships were erased from history with surgical brutality. Some didn't even get a distress signal out. The few that tried to flee were herded by our interceptors, not out of kindness, but for tracking. We let a few run so we could follow them back, find their rally points, their supply routes. Then we hit those too. This wasn't just a defense. It was a purge. We didn't want prisoners. We didn't want terms. We wanted silence, a void, a reminder. And in the middle of all of it, somewhere in that endless black, I was told to prepare for deployment. My name's Thorn. Captain Terran Ground Division, 15 years in Black Ops, 8 confirmed planetary suppressions, 4 enemy world leaders assassinated on record. I'd seen the inside of empires, knew how they bled. And now, finally, I was being sent into the fire without a leash. They dropped us in stealth pods just past Mars' orbit. No approach trajectory, no warning. We were to land on the Empire's forward base near Saturn, set up under their assumption we'd still be negotiating. Idiots. The landing was rough, as it always was, slammed through their orbital nets and landed hard on the surface of their outpost dome. I lost 2 men just to atmospheric compression. We breached through the outer wall in less than 6 minutes. Screams echoed down the corridors. I didn't issue commands. I didn't have to. These men weren't soldiers. They were revenants. Every one of them had lost something to the Empire. A home, a brother, a child. None of us cared about medals or rank anymore. We were there for one purpose, to make sure the galaxy remembered why Earth had been left alone for so long. Their commander tried to surrender. He got 3 words out before Kieran put a round through his skull. The rest of the garrison fell in under an hour. When the orbital feed caught up, Command simply issued one directive. Push forward. Clean sweep. No trace. So we did. Over the next 2 weeks, Terran forces tore through the Empire's outer ring like a wildfire. They tried to respond, recalled fleets, diverted resources, but nothing worked. We weren't playing by rules anymore. We hit supply chains at random. We sabotaged jump gates. We corrupted their logistics with old Earth cyber warfare tech so dirty that even our own AIs begged us to stop. And the most terrifying part for them? We never spoke. Not a single broadcast, not a message, just the black flags of Terran ships and the silence that followed. It wasn't war. It was a message. Then came the final push. Terran Command located the fleet's central command post on the moon Syrinx 4, 2 jumps out from the Empire's core world sector. Normally, this would require weeks of preparation, diplomatic clearances, or massive fleet coordination. We took it in under 72 hours, no battleships, just drones, shadow teams, and kinetic bombardment. The surface of Syrinx 4 cracked open like dried earth. We didn't land and take over. We turned the entire moon into a monument, fields of glass and ash, broken wreckage spelling one phrase, "This is what happens when you forget." The aftermath wasn't clean. There were reports, some true, some exaggerated, that our soldiers used Empire warlords as bait for orbital cannon calibration, that a human pilot ejected inside an Imperial ship just to tear it apart from the inside, that we sent corpses drifting back to Imperial space with coordinates pinned to their chests. No one tried to deny them. Let the galaxy believe we were monsters. Monsters don't get invaded. Back on Luna, Lawson was promoted. He never celebrated. Just smoked more, stared out the dome window at Earth. I saw him once after the campaign, alone in a bar deep in the core. He looked older, not tired, just done. "You think they learned?" he asked me. I sipped my drink, watched the stars. "No," I said, "but they'll remember." And they did. To this day, no ship crosses into Terran space without absolute clearance. Even pirates avoid our zones. Alien empires whisper warnings to their young, "Don't provoke the Terrans. Don't enter their dark." They still don't know why. They weren't there. But we were. And we haven't forgotten. It wasn't over. Even after we cracked the moons, turned their outposts into glass, and silenced their fleets, something in me refused to rest. There was no celebration on Earth, no parades, no medals, just silence. The same silence we gave the galaxy, the same silence we gave our dead. They thought we'd forget. That after the dust settled, we'd go back to diplomacy, trade, treaties. They didn't understand that humans don't go back. We only go through. And the war was far from over. By the 3rd month after the Syrinx IV purge, Imperial transmissions began to stutter. Their command hierarchy was fragmenting. Fleet admirals blamed planetary governors. Governors blamed logistics. And in the middle of it all, hundreds of alien factions, races we'd never even heard of, were rising up from inside their empire, seizing power, burning archives, rewriting loyalties. We didn't interfere. Why should we? We'd already made our point. But something about the way they fell apart, it didn't sit right with me. When the orders came for deep recon, I volunteered. Not because I wanted to fight again. I'd fought enough. Killed enough. Hell, I didn't even know if I wanted to come back. But there was something off. Like a weight in my gut that hadn't settled since the first breach. They sent us with black tags this time. Fully deniable, completely unofficial, off the books. Not even our own AI support. Just us, our weapons, and the dark. We were dropped on the surface of Orvanis Prime, a once thriving trade world, now a smoldering mess of collapsed towers and tribal warfare. It wasn't the work of the Terran fleet. We hadn't even touched this planet during the campaign. This was internal. The Empire was eating itself alive. We found pockets of survivors, alien civilians hiding underground, starving, broken. I didn't expect sympathy to claw at me, but it did. One of them, a thin-skinned, four-armed miner, begged me to kill him. He'd lost his wife, his children, his home, all because his own government refused to retreat when Terran forces gave warning. They were ordered to stand proud. Pride didn't keep them warm. Pride didn't keep them fed. I didn't kill him. But I didn't save him either. There was no point. That's the curse of the human mind. We feel everything, even when we're trying not to. I pushed deeper into the ruins with my squad. Just 6 of us now. Veterans, ghosts. Every one of us with a body count that would terrify most generals. And yet here we were, crawling through the skeleton of an empire, not looking for enemies, but answers. Why now? Why here? Why the hell did they come to Terran space in the first place? We found the answer in an abandoned data vault, under what used to be the Orvanis Governor's Spire. Encrypted, but not for us. Our slicer, Rourke, quiet bastard, never spoke more than 5 words in a row, broke the locks in minutes. What we found chilled the room. The invasion wasn't about resources, wasn't about diplomacy, wasn't even about power. It was fear. Someone, somewhere deep in the Empire's core intelligence network, had intercepted transmissions from old Earth, buried files, redacted logs, ancient war records from centuries ago. The kind of files that had been sealed by Earth's own governments, marked with a simple phrase, "Do not open under any circumstance." They opened them. They read about Earth's first war machines, our biological weapons, our extinction-level contingency plans, the old AI wars. They saw what we were capable of when pushed too far, and they panicked. Their logic was twisted. If humanity ever turns its attention outward again, we're all finished. That was the conclusion of their High Command's internal report. So they decided to strike first, not to conquer, but to cripple, to neuter Earth before we remembered what we were. But they didn't strike fast enough, or hard enough, or smart enough, and they woke us up. When we relayed the findings to command, the response was a single line. Confirmed. Continue mission. I don't know who wrote it. Probably not even a person, just an AI directive. But it hit me like a hammer. They were never trying to enslave us. They were trying to survive us. And in trying, they gave us every reason to destroy them. Rourke asked me later, when we were setting charges to blow the vault, "What do we become now?" I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. His hands were steady, his eyes hollow. "What we were always meant to be," I said. "The thing they feared." He nodded, said nothing. We left the vault in flames. 3 weeks later, the Empire officially collapsed. The Galactic Council dissolved. The core worlds went silent. The remaining fleets fragmented into private armies. The last transmission from what used to be their capital was a looped distress beacon begging for help. From anyone. No one answered. The stars went quiet. And for the first time in human history, we stood alone. No more threats, no more empires over our heads, just silence. But silence isn't peace. It's pressure, building, shifting, waiting to break. Because here's the truth most people back home didn't want to hear. We won too fast. The campaign lasted just over 3 months. Total. That's how long it took for humanity to go from a quarantined backwater species to the dominant military force in the galaxy. 3 months. And now, we had nothing left to fight. Some celebrated. Others drank themselves into comas. Most of us just drifted. You don't build a life around war and then just stop. I went back to Earth for a time, tried to live like a man again, bought a place in the Andes, high up, away from the noise. I grew a beard, let my muscles soften, pretended I didn't have blood on my hands. Didn't work. The silence followed me. Even the sky seemed different. Not because they'd changed, but because we had. Every star I looked at, I knew we could reach it. Every planet we mapped, I knew we could take it. But should we? That was the question. No one knew the answer. And then, just as I was starting to forget how to aim a rifle, the knock came. Not a digital ping, not a comms request. An actual knock. On my cabin door, I opened it. Saw a woman in black fatigues. No rank, no name, no insignia. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "It's not over." I didn't ask who sent her. Didn't need to. She handed me a datapad. Top-level encryption. I cracked it in seconds. One word on the screen. Remnants. Turns out not everyone in the Empire folded. Some of them adapted. Turned into something worse. Something quiet. Hidden colonies. Sleeper fleets. Rogue science teams experimenting with tech, even weed outlawed. They weren't building a new empire. They were building a revenge machine. And they'd started targeting human settlements on the fringes. Silent raids. Whole outposts vanished. No survivors, no messages. Just the Terran flags, folded and bloody, left behind. They were trying to scare us. They failed. Because fear is a human weapon, not theirs. And now I had a new mission. The new war didn't begin with a battle. It began with a whisper. One of our forward colonies, Antares Drift Station, went dark. No explosions, no SOS, no wreckage, just vanished. The orbital satellite stopped transmitting at 0432 UTC. 2 minutes later, the station's entire presence disappeared from Terran Command's grid. Not even debris showed up on the scans. It was as if it had never existed. Antares was a civilian colony. Scientists, engineers, families, no soldiers, no weapons, just people who'd believed the war was over. They died screaming into a void that didn't answer back. When the report reached Luna High Command, no debates were held. No press releases, no condemnations. One single order was issued, broadcast on an encrypted channel only a few of us were cleared to hear. Hunt protocol is green, all units reactivated. Full burn. I read it on my private comm in the Andes. Didn't need a second invitation. The beard came off. The rifle came out of storage. The war gear hadn't gathered dust, because something in me always knew it had come back to this. I boarded the shuttle in silence, same as the rest. 10 of us. Old names, old ghosts. No handshakes, no speeches. We weren't fighting for glory this time. We were fighting because they'd touched civilians. Crossed the line even monsters don't cross. You don't touch our people, ever. We were deployed to the fringe world Argon 6, the last known location of a colony ship that had rerouted toward Antares before the blackout. The ship's name was Providence. It was supposed to be a fresh start. 1,200 colonists, most of them Terran-born, heading to settle a new system with Terran protection. We found Providence in orbit above Argon 6, or at least what was left of it. The ship's hull had been gutted from the inside. No external impact, no breach signatures. Everything screamed of internal sabotage. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the bodies. No signs of blaster wounds, no shrapnel, just missing faces. Literally. The skin and muscle from their faces had been removed, clean, surgical, with terrifying precision. Not one survivor, not one child spared. They'd left the corpses floating, drifting through the corridors like ghosts in a vacuum. My team walked in silence, weapons drawn, mouths shut. I caught Frost, our close-quarters guy, real bastard with a shotgun, just staring at one of the child-sized corpses. His hands were shaking. Frost doesn't shake. "They're not trying to win," he said finally. "They're trying to send a message." He was right. This wasn't a battle tactic. It was psychological warfare, and it was human in nature. But it wasn't us, it was them. The Empire's leftovers. The survivors we missed. The ones who'd gone underground, deep into black research divisions and death cults, fueled by what we'd done to their civilization. They weren't rebuilding. They were evolving. We accessed the ship's corrupted logs. Rourke, somehow still alive, still quiet, found fragments of audio. A voice, not distorted, not mechanical, calm, male, alien but fluent in Terran standard. "We see you. We've learned from you. This is your legacy. We are your children now." I felt my blood go cold. They were mimicking us, stealing our tactics, studying our psychology, taking what made humanity dangerous and turning it back on us. But they'd made one mistake. They thought that by copying us, they'd understand us. They didn't. They hadn't learned what it costs to fight the way we do. The madness, the guilt, the rage that doesn't leave your bones, even when the war is over. We didn't choose this path because we were strong. We chose it because we were cornered, again and again, until violence was all we had left. They didn't understand that, but they would. We left Providence behind. Burned it. There was nothing left to bury. The dead deserved silence, not orbit. Our next destination was Vorax 9, a backwater mining moon. Low gravity, high radiation, nothing there but rock and regret. But intel showed energy spikes below the surface. Not natural. We landed hard and deep, drilled through the crust in a drop shaft rig, descending into the planet like nails into a coffin. The walls of the shaft glowed faint green. Ion residue, weapons testing. We breached the lower tunnels and found what we were looking for. A lab. Empire-built, but altered. Terran tech spliced with alien biotech. Screens still running. Tanks filled with fluids and limbs. Human limbs. Cloned, maybe, but the DNA was Terran. And the eyes, floating in a vat, were open. Frost threw up in his helmet. He tried to stop it, failed. Rourke started pulling files. I covered the exit. My rifle felt heavier than usual. The place reeked of old blood and fear. Then I heard it. A child crying. At first I thought it was a recording. A loop designed to mess with us. But it was real. I followed the sound down a side corridor and found a room. Sterile, quiet, too clean. And in the center, a boy. Maybe 9. Pale, shaved head, no expression, just sitting there, knees pulled up, crying without tears. I stepped in slowly, weapon lowered. "Hey," I said, voice soft. "It's okay. You're safe now." He looked up at me and smiled. His eyes weren't right. They were too focused, too calm. Then he said something I'll never forget. "We wanted to see how long it would take for you to care." Before I could move, the room locked. Magnetic clamps hit the walls. A siren started blaring. I ran, grabbed the kid, shouldered the door. Frost was already at the breach point, laying charges. Rourke screamed through comms. "They set this whole place up. They wanted us to come here." I looked at the boy. He was still smiling. We blew the place sky high. Barely escaped with our lives. My left arm got shredded by shrapnel. Rourke's leg was gone. Frost wasn't breathing by the time we reached the surface. The kid? Dead. Not from the blast, from a kill switch embedded in his brain. When the lab fell, he just slumped, like a puppet with the strings cut. We sat on the extraction shuttle in silence. Rourke finally said, "They're not hiding anymore." And he was right. This wasn't a remnant faction. This was a new enemy, not Imperial, not alien, something in between, something worse. And they were using us as the blueprint. Back on Luna Command, the intel hit like a bomb. Half the brass wanted to double down on surveillance, gather more data. The other half wanted immediate scorched earth retaliation on every outer rim colony that showed unusual energy spikes. I didn't care either way. I knew what I had to do. We couldn't fight this war like we fought the last one. That was the mistake they were counting on. This enemy wasn't trying to conquer. They were trying to mirror us, to break us from the inside. That meant I had to go dark, off-grid, unofficial, and Command gave me the green light. No oversight, no chain of command, just one directive. Burn them all. They gave me a ship that didn't exist. No registration, no markings, no AI, just black steel and old tech that couldn't be traced. The engine sounded like beasts when they fired up. Raw, loud, angry. Fitting. The only name it had was what I carved into the inside of the cockpit with my knife. Retribution. I didn't take a crew. I didn't want one. This wasn't a mission, it was a sentence. I'd seen too much, lost too much, and the part of me that used to hope for peace had bled out in that lab on Vorax 9. I was done waiting for orders. Done talking. Now it was my turn to hunt. Command gave me a dead drop list. Half-confirmed coordinates where energy spikes had matched remnant activity. Most were in the outer zones, deep in the stretch of unclaimed space where no law existed anymore. I didn't ask why we hadn't struck them sooner. I already knew the answer. We were afraid. Not of losing, not of dying, but of what we'd have to become to win again. The first stop was a moon called Eris Drift, orbiting a gas giant named Letak. It didn't show up on any charts until recently. Remnants had been tunneling beneath its surface using ancient Imperial equipment. Whatever they were building wasn't just for defense, it was for expansion. I landed hard and went in alone. My suit was old school. No HUD, no active comms, just armor, breath control, and rage. I walked through the tunnels for 7 hours before I found the first one. He was sitting in a circle surrounded by bones, carving into his own arm with a shard of metal. Not human, not fully alien either. Somewhere in between, twisted, reconstructed. He looked at me like he knew me. "You're late," he whispered. I put a round through his chest before he could stand. No hesitation, no mercy. This was how I worked now. No interrogations, no diplomacy, just one man purging ops. The remnants weren't like the Empire. They didn't beg. They didn't run. They watched, studied. They wanted to see how far I'd go, if the rumors were true. That night, I torched the tunnels and left nothing breathing behind. 76 confirmed kills. And I didn't feel a damn thing. The deeper I pushed into remnant space, the more twisted their work became. On Station Redmark, orbiting a dead sun, I found vats of cloned human skin, stretched and stapled to frames like trophies. Data logs showed they were trying to map pain, not as a weapon, as a language. They believed emotion was our greatest weapon, rage, grief, desperation, so they were trying to create it synthetically. It didn't work. You can't engineer hell. You have to live in it. I gave them a taste. The station exploded behind me as I left orbit, bodies still screaming in vacuum. I didn't even stay to watch the fire. By then, I wasn't hunting for justice. I was hunting for the voice, the one we'd heard in the Providence logs, calm, focused, almost human, the leader of the remnants, or whatever passed for leadership in something so fractured. The one who said, "We are your children now." I needed to find him. Not because Command wanted it, but because I couldn't sleep with his voice in my head. I tracked fragments of his transmissions across 6 systems, always just behind, always one step too late. He knew I was coming. Started leaving messages in the wreckage, carved into walls, burned into floors. Do you hate us yet? Did your soul rot, or did you cut it out yourself? You made us. Own us. It wasn't taunting. It was something worse. Understanding. He knew me, or thought he did. And maybe he was right. On Black Horizon, I finally found a clue. It wasn't a military base or a lab. It was a church, or what used to be one. A derelict human outpost that had been converted into a temple for the remnants. They'd taken the symbols of old Earth religions and twisted them. Crosses made of bones. Scriptures rewritten with blood. Not just mimicry. Worship. They didn't just copy humanity. They worshipped us. In their eyes, we weren't villains. We were gods. I found a recording there. The voice again, this time speaking to a crowd. The humans taught us that peace is a lie, that survival is violence. They speak with their silence. They teach with fire, and in fire, we will become them. We do not hate them. We revere them. And we will show them that they are not alone in the dark anymore. That was the moment I realized something. This wasn't revenge. This was ascension. They were becoming what they believed we were. And they believed we were monsters. So that's what they were becoming. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat in my ship, staring at the stars, trying to remember the last time I'd felt human. I thought about the boy on Vorax 9, about Frost, about Lawson, about the civilians we'd failed to protect. And then I thought about myself, what I'd become. Maybe they were right. Maybe they weren't copying monsters. Maybe they were copying me. The final coordinates came in a burst transmission from a rogue AI fragment I picked up in the ruins of a relay station. It had been hiding, not from us, but from the remnants. They were devouring anything that wasn't pure biology, even tech. The AI was barely holding itself together. Its final gift to me was a location. Carry-on Deep. System null. No record, no map, just darkness. It was there, where he was waiting. Carry-on Deep wasn't on any star chart. No light reached it. No signals escaped it. It was a hole in the galaxy, a gravity wound that pulled you in without mercy and kept you there until you forgot what stars looked like. The moment I jumped into the system, every sensor in Retribution started glitching. Artificial lights flickered. Power dipped. Even the old analog backups stuttered. It wasn't sabotage. It was the system itself, like it hated machines. Or maybe it just hated me. I drifted for 2 hours before the fog of interference broke. And then I saw it. A station. No, not a station. A carcass. Massive, half-finished, twisted around itself like something had tried to grow it rather than build it. Spires spiraled out into the void, like bones reaching for a god that never answered. And at the center, a soft red glow. Heartbeat-like. I docked without clearance, forced the clamps, didn't wait for oxygen readouts. My suit was sealed. My will was worse. When the hatch opened, the silence hit like a gunshot. No alarms, no lights, no sounds. Just the slow drip of fluid somewhere far below, echoing like a funeral march. I walked. Every step deeper felt like memory was peeling off me. I started to forget my own voice, my own name. The longer I stayed, the more the station whispered. Not in words, in guilt. Images flashed across my visor, faces from the past. Frost, Rourke, the kid on Vorax 9, even my father. Dead, all dead. And somewhere inside me something cracked. This place wasn't just built from metal. It was built from grief. I found the central chamber 4 hours in. It was vast, a cathedral of darkness. And in the center, suspended in a web of cables and nerve strands, floated him. He wasn't fully alien anymore, wasn't human either. His skin was pale, stretched thin like old parchment. His limbs were long, fingers almost claw-like. But the eyes, they were human. Exactly human, and I knew them. They were mine. He smiled. "You came," he said, voice as calm as ever. I raised my rifle. "What the hell are you?" He didn't flinch. "A lesson. You murdered children. So did you." I stepped forward, slow and cold. "I ended a war." He shook his head. "You started another. You lit a fire and thought it would only burn your enemies. But fire doesn't care who it touches." I pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. He looked at my weapon and smiled wider. "This place isn't bound by your rules. You're in our world now." I dropped the rifle, drew my knife. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from something worse. Recognition. "I've killed worse than you." "No," he said softly. "You've killed me." I froze. "What?" He tilted his head. "I was born from you. From your rage, your grief, your war." "Do you remember New Damascus?" My stomach dropped. Of course I remembered. It was one of the first operations I ever led, deep strike on a rebel-held colony. Intel said it was an Imperial lab front. We hit hard, fast. No survivors. Not even the kids. Afterward, the reports changed. Said it was a research outpost, civilian-aligned. The truth got buried. I never spoke about it again. But I never forgot. "They pulled the DNA of the survivors," he whispered. "Tried to preserve something. Tried to make sense of the horror. And when the Empire fell, that research was left behind. I was built from it, shaped by it, nurtured by your shadow." He floated closer, the cables twitching like veins. "I am not your enemy," he said. "I am your reflection." For the first time since the war began, I felt cold. Not battlefield cold. Empty cold. The kind you get when you realize maybe you're not the hero in your own story. That maybe the monster across from you didn't crawl out of hell. Maybe you threw him into the dark yourself. But I wasn't done. I pulled the secondary trigger from inside my suit. The manual override, the one connected to the nuke core wired into retribution. His eyes narrowed. "You would burn this all down again?" "I never stopped," I said. "You'll kill yourself." I stepped forward. "I'm already dead." He smiled. Not cruel, not afraid, just sad. "I pity you," he said. And for a moment, I think he meant it. The floor shook. Sirens started blaring. The countdown began. I lunged, knife in hand, slashed through the closest cables. He screamed, a high, hollow sound that wasn't pain but memory. The station began to tear itself apart. He looked up at me one last time. "Then let us die together, Father." I don't remember the blast, only the silence afterward. I woke up in a med bay, real one, Terran black site hospital orbiting Earth. Burns across half my body, left arm gone, right leg replaced. I shouldn't be alive. But they pulled me out. Somehow. Lawson was there, older now, grayer. Thought he'd died on Titan. "You really lit the galaxy on fire this time," he said. I didn't speak, didn't trust my voice. After a while, he sighed. "The remnant's gone. Whatever was left of them died with that station." I looked at him. "You sure?" He paused, then shook his head. "No." Neither was I, because something in that voice still echoes in me, something in his eyes, the part that never blamed me, the part that forgave me, and that's what haunts me the most. I'm not a soldier anymore, not officially. I live on Earth now, near the sea, quiet, alone. Sometimes kids walk by the cliffs where I sit, and they wave. They don't know who I am, what I've done. They shouldn't. They deserve silence. But sometimes when the sky's too quiet, I hear him. That voice, not accusing, not angry, just waiting for the next fire to rise. Because the truth is, we didn't end the war. We taught it how to begin. The doctors told me I was lucky. I lost an arm, half a lung, 2 ribs, nerve damage down my spine. But I was breathing, heart beating. They said it was a miracle, said it was the suit, the emergency autoseal, said it was the gods. They didn't know I didn't believe in miracles, not anymore. I'd crawled through enough fire to know that surviving wasn't always a blessing. Sometimes it was a sentence. And I was serving mine, day by day, memory by memory. The war was over. Or that's what they told the public. They wrapped the Carry-On Deep incident in a veil of classified reports and ceremonial language. Final containment operation successful. They framed me as a hero again. Quietly. Privately. No interviews, no medals this time, just a cleared name and silence. And the silence was louder than ever. I spent 6 months in a rehabilitation dome along the equator, halfway between old Kenya and the ocean. Isolated. The kind of place you send people to disappear. I didn't argue. Every night I stared at the sky. It looked the same, but I knew better. Out there, beyond the systems we charted, there were still shadows. Still things we didn't understand. I'd cut out the heart of the remnants. I'd burned their cathedral of grief. But fire doesn't always kill what hides in the ash. Some things endure, and some things evolve. The first signal came on a cold morning in March. A deep space listening post, one of the old Imperial satellites we repurposed during the campaign, pinged Terran command with an anomaly. Coordinates, Sector Varnus Delta 4, unclaimed space, dead system. But someone, or something, had just fired a tight beam communication across 9 light-years, unencrypted, primitive, almost Terran. The message was brief, just 2 words. "We remember. It shouldn't have been possible. The signal carried human cadence, human patterning, not machine, not alien, but worse than that, it was my voice. I was summoned back to Luna without ceremony. Lawson met me at the dock. Still stiff. Still older than he had a right to be. I hadn't seen him in months. I didn't ask why they brought me in. He just handed me a data pad. "They're back?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, something else." I scanned the data. The transmission wasn't just an echo. It was live, repeating every 12 hours, bouncing off old Empire-era satellites like breadcrumbs. Lawson looked me in the eye. "We think someone is copying you." The black site analysts called it a mimic strain, an offshoot of the remnant codebase. A rogue faction we never caught, maybe part of a backup network, maybe something new. But I knew better. It wasn't a copy. It was a seed. Something left behind in Carry-On Deep. Something born not just from genetic manipulation or memory encoding, but from intention. From the way I moved, the way I killed, the way I judged and executed without question, the creature I'd destroyed. It had recorded everything. And now That recording was speaking for itself. We assembled a team, not military, not official, just operatives like me, burned, broken, loyal to nothing but the mission. 5 of us. I didn't ask their names, didn't want to know them. You don't name ghosts. We were inserted into Varnus Delta under deep cloak. No escort, no external comms. We were the fail-safe, the people you send when you can't admit something's wrong. The system was empty, at first. A dead star loomed at its center, ancient, massive, cold. Orbiting it was a shattered planetary ring and the remnants of a mining platform from the old Empire era, long abandoned. We made contact on day 3. The platform came online without warning, lights flickering, beacons humming, power where there should be none. And then, over open comms, no encryption, no hesitation, my voice spoke. "I see you." The others froze, but I didn't. I stepped forward. "Show yourself." There was no reply, only a hiss of static. Then another phrase. "You were the beginning." We entered the platform. No resistance, no traps, just decay and silence. Inside we found bodies, dozens, recent, human, but not Terran. Not exactly. Their physiology was off, too clean, too symmetrical, engineered, not born. Each body had a number tattooed on its chest, and each one had my eyes. My team fell silent. One of them, young, quiet, good with tech, checked the data logs. He went pale. "This isn't a base," he said. "It's a womb." They were cloning me, not just biologically, behaviorally. The logs showed tests, simulations, memory imprints, battle scenario loops. They were trying to recreate me, not as a man, but as a weapon. Somewhere, someone believed that what I'd done in Carrion Deep wasn't a crime or a tragedy. They thought it was a blueprint, and they were trying to mass-produce it. The final chamber was a mirror. Literally. A room filled with reflective surfaces, each one playing moments from my past. Combat footage, kill orders, debriefings. But the worst were the quiet moments. Me sitting alone after missions. Me crying. Me burying comrades. Me hesitating over a child's corpse. The things I thought I'd hidden, suppressed, deleted. They'd recorded everything, and they were studying it. The chamber's center housed a containment pod. Inside was a figure, my face, my body, slightly younger, stronger, unscarred, eyes closed, breathing steady, not asleep, waiting. I didn't hesitate. I raised my weapon and pulled the trigger. The glass exploded. The clone fell forward. Twitching, gasping. I stepped closer, and as the life drained from its eyes, it whispered something in a voice I hadn't used in years. "They're still building." We destroyed the facility, burned it to atoms. But the silence that followed didn't feel like victory. It felt like delay, because someone, somewhere out there, still believed in the myth of me, still believed in the doctrine of destruction, still believed the only way to protect Terran space was to become the thing I became. And the worst part? I understood them. I returned to Earth for the last time. Not as a hero, not as a soldier, but as a man haunted by what followed him home. Because now I knew the truth. The remnants didn't lose. They changed form. They stopped copying humanity and started copying me. Not out of hatred, but out of faith. The dead don't speak. But legacy does. It whispers louder than screams. It survives fire, outlasts war, and buries itself in the bones of those who follow. And mine? Mine was everywhere now. Across the fractured remains of the Empire, in Terran military academies, in AI combat simulations, in every whispered rumor between mercenaries, smugglers, even frightened diplomats trying to redraw a galaxy too broken to fix. Do not enter Terran space. They don't negotiate. One man wiped out an empire. It was a lie, of course. I wasn't a god. I wasn't even a hero. I was just a man who got angry and didn't stop burning. 6 months after the Varnus Delta facility was destroyed, we found another one, then another. They weren't all cloning facilities, not anymore. Some were training camps. Others were signal hubs. One was a prison. One was a school. All of them tied to a new doctrine, one not written by the remnants or the Empire. It was written in my words, my voice, my decisions. I don't remember recording any of it, but I didn't need to. They'd learned from me, watched me, and they'd written a doctrine that twisted everything I had done into something holy. They called it the Thorn Protocol, a set of principles, a way of thinking. It taught that peace was a lie told by the weak, that silence was strength, that preemptive annihilation was mercy, that war wasn't a tool, it was a language, and humans spoke it best. I read the full document in silence, all 57 pages of it, word by word. At the end, my hands were shaking, because it didn't sound like something alien. It sounded like me. Worse, it made sense. Lawson called me into command shortly after. He was different now. Tired, yeah, but also wary. Like I was a bomb they hadn't figured out how to disarm. He didn't sit. "Thorn," he said, "we have a problem." I raised an eyebrow. "Just one?" He didn't smile. He pulled up a map, the outer sectors. Red dots lit across the rim like a bleeding wound. "Copycat strikes," he said. "Not remnant. Human." I stared. "Mercs?" "No, colonists, civilians, old Terran veterans, people who believe in the protocol, people who think you were right all along." He paused. "Maybe you were." "No," I said. My voice was quiet, but inside I was screaming. No, I wasn't. But denial doesn't erase a legacy. It just buries it deeper. I left Earth 3 days later. No send-off, no authorization, just a ship. My gear, and an old name on a signal I couldn't ignore. Juno 7, a rogue broadcast station deep in contested space. It had been silent for years, a forgotten relay, but now it was lit up like a flare. Broadcasting my voice on loop. Silence is sovereignty, strength is survival, compassion is a luxury of the dead. They weren't just quoting me, they were preaching me. When I landed, they didn't greet me with weapons, they greeted me with reverence. The compound was small, dug into rock, surrounded by broken satellites repurposed as listening towers. At least 60 people lived there, men, women, children, a militia trained like special ops, a community forged in fear. They weren't hiding. They were preparing, and every wall bore one face. Mine. A man approached, young, scarred, calm. He introduced himself as Alec. "You're real," he said. "I'm not your god," I said. He nodded. "No, but you were the first to see clearly." I stepped past him. Into the main hall. Dozens of followers, a tactical board, doctrines, strike plans, all based on my missions, twisted versions, rewritten to look like gospel. They weren't building a rebellion, they were building a philosophy. I didn't speak for hours, I just watched, listened. Some of them were veterans from the war. Others were born after. They'd never seen the Empire, never fought in the void. But they believed. Not in peace, not in progress, in control, in fear, in me. And the truth hit like a bullet to the spine. I didn't just end the Empire, I'd replaced it. Alec met me later in the command room. "You burned the galaxy to save Earth," he said, "and we're doing the same." I looked him in the eyes. By turning children into soldiers? By making sure they're never victims. My fists clenched. "You think this ends with you in charge?" "No," he said without hesitation. "It ends with no one ever daring to challenge us again." He handed me a data chip. "Coordinates, final base, the last of the remnant cells. You kill them, and this ends. You erase the enemy, and you prove once and for all that the protocol works." "And if I don't?" I asked. He shrugged. Then we keep spreading, system by system, until there's nothing left that doesn't obey. I took the chip. Not because I agreed, because I knew the truth. If I didn't go, someone else would. And they'd carry my shadow further than I ever meant it to reach. The final base was deep in what was left of Empire territory, a broken moon orbiting a gas giant they called Vel 9. The gravity well was unstable. No fleet dared go near it. But I wasn't a fleet. I landed during a magnetic storm, almost died on re-entry. Didn't care. Inside the base there were no weapons, no soldiers, just data, archives. The last remnant hadn't been building armies. They'd been building a record of everything. My missions, the civilian casualties, the wiped colonies, the Empire's crimes, our retaliations, unfiltered, unedited, the full truth. The remnant leader, the one from Carrion Deep, had left one final message. Not for me, for everyone. If history is written by the victors, then let the dead write the footnotes. This is not an accusation. It is a mirror. Look, and decide what you truly are. I sat there, for hours, reading, listening, watching footage of myself that had been scrubbed from Terran archives, the raids, the collateral, the moments of hesitation. And I broke. Not because I didn't recognize the man I saw, but because I did. I left the base untouched, let it broadcast, let the galaxy see, let them choose what came next. And I returned to Juno 7 one last time. Alec greeted me with pride in his eyes. "What did you find?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just walked past him, to the center of the compound, where the children trained. And I destroyed the shrine with my own hands, smashed every screen, burned every banner, erased every recording of my voice. They tried to stop me. I broke bones, drew blood, but I made sure they watched me do it. When I was done, I stood in the center of the ruins, bleeding, panting, free. Then I looked at Alec. "This ends," I said. He stared. "You can't kill an idea." "No," I said, "but I can make it mine again." That was 2 years ago. Now, I don't speak much. But I teach. Not war, not fear, not vengeance, restraint. Because the galaxy didn't fear humanity because of our weapons. It feared us because of what we'd become. But it didn't have to stay that way. Maybe we can't erase the scars, but we don't have to cut new ones. My name is Thorn. I am not a soldier. I am not a symbol. I am the man who burned an empire and then buried the fire.